Hello everyone, and welcome to the Assessor and Verifier Setup Training and Qualifications webinar. We're going to be looking today at the Assessor and Verifier setups. We'll also look at training and what the difference are with the qualifications. But just before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Callum Duncan, and I am one of the consultants here at Polaris Learning. Beside me, I also have my colleague Kieran, who is now for 3 years, and Kieran works on our software of Plus and also our new online competency database Progress. Okay, so we'll just make a start. Today's agenda, so we're going to look at the background and do an introduction to Polaris. Also look at the relationship between training and assessment. Before you start, what you need to consider: the ratio between assessors and verifiers. Do you need qualifications, alternative options to qualifications? The need for refresher training or recertification, and then a wrap up and questions at the end. So just a little bit about Polaris Learning and who we are. We've been involved in designing and training of competency systems since 1996. And have developed important relationships with international-based clients within the services that we provide. In terms of online, we've tackled our first of the big projects in 2006, where we developed online assessor training for a company based in the Middle East. This has helped us build our own platform for Progress, which appears in some cases, case studies presented. We've also been running our own learning platform Plus since 2015, where several thousand of assessors have successfully used this online training to go through their qualification. So the relationship between training and assessment. So where does competency come into the training process? If we review the slide, we can see how the training and competency work together. So stage one, this is task induction. So this is where external training will take place, company inductions, and familiarization. At stage two, at this stage of the process, it's mainly on-the-job training with supervision. The supervisor will coach the individual to perform tasks to the required level and assist them with dealing with non-routine tasks or when dealing with issues. Stage three, task competence. At this stage of the process, the individual should be able to work on routine tasks unsupervised. They will know their own limits and be able to deal with problems and issues. It's only at this stage, stage three, that you would perform a competency assessment. The assessments is the rounding off of the training process. So for example, when you learn to drive, you only sit the driving test once you can show that you can meet the required standards to drive and you have the correct knowledge and understanding. So before you start, who should assess and verify? So before going ahead with assessor and verify training, you need to think about who would be appropriate to become an assessor or verifier. You should also think about the following. Are they committed to the role? Have the individuals come forward to become assessors or verifiers? Have they been picked and made to become assessors or verifiers? Do they understand what is involved? Have they been inducted into the role and provided with an overview of the position and been aware of the role and responsibilities which come with assessment and verification? Will they see the training through? Are the individuals motivated to complete the training? Will they complete the training program or qualification? Will the individuals have the time allocated to them to complete the qualification? And is there a time frame that they must complete the training by? Before you start, who should assess and verify? You should also need to think about the individual skill sets as well as deciding who can assess and verify. Do they have the right technical competence? you need to decide if the individual has the right technical competence required. You want to have a good spread of assessors with different technical competence so you can cover all areas of the organization, also the roles and responsibilities within the area. You may need to have specific roles as assessors as they require technical competence needed to assess specific criteria or performance standards. Do they have the right soft skills? The individuals who are to become assessors or verifiers need to be approachable, encouraging, and good motivators. Can they and will they have the right conversations? Again, this goes back to soft skills and feedback. Can the verifiers and assessors be able to deliver feedback? Good completion rates. To get good completion rates from the individuals, you need to have the correct assessors and verifiers in place to make your competency system effective. Let's look at the assessors first. You should have a good spread of technical competence amongst your assessors so they can cover all job roles within your organization. Assessors are usually supervisors or team leaders who will be assessing individuals who they are responsible for. It is important that assessors are involved in the assessment process and are actively assessing. Verifiers. They need to have some technical knowledge and understanding of the tasks being assessed. Not all verifiers have the technical expertise, and they are just verifying to check that the assessors have done their job correctly and followed the assessment process and completed the assessment paperwork in full. Splitting the verifier role between technical and non-technical. The verifier can be split into two different areas. So they can have the technical verifier and the non-technical verifier. The initial verifier may be just checking to make sure the assessor has completed the assessment in the correct way following the assessment process. They will screen the assessment paperwork to make sure the assessor has documented the assessment in full. However, there may be a specific section of the assessment which needs to be verified by a technical verifier. This could be due to the assessment being done in a very specific area, a very specific piece of equipment, or a very specific process, which needs to be reviewed by someone with technical expertise. Assessors and verifiers, how to get buy-in. This can be a challenge for some organizations to get buy-in from assessors and verifiers. Some of the key to getting good buy-in from everyone involved is to have the following in place. The training. By having good, effective training for assessors and verifiers can have a big impact. If the training can explain and demonstrate the roles, responsibilities for assessors and verifiers, this can help to motivate and encourage assessors and verifiers. Support and guidance. It is very important to have good support and guidance for the assessors and the verifiers, so they know that they are not alone in their roles, and if they have any questions or doubts, they have somebody to turn to for advice and guidance. Assessment criteria. Having easy to follow and understanding performance criteria and knowledge questions can make a massive difference. From my own experience working with organizations in the past, one of the most discouraging aspects of the assessment process can be performance criteria, which is set too low, or written at a level which is too complicated to understand. Also, any knowledge questions should be written in a way that the assessor and the candidate can understand what is being asked. Assessment paperwork. This is also very similar to the assessment paperwork. During my time at Polaris, I've assisted many companies streamlining their assessment paperwork so it does not become a burden for the assessors and the verifiers. Having a streamlined process with simple assessment paperwork can motivate assessors and verifiers to continue with their roles. What ratios do we need between assessors and verifiers? Well, that really depends on a number of different areas within the assessment and the verification setup. And we can look at this in two scenarios. So scenario one, we'll look at a rig startup. So for example, when the rig is crewing up for a new contract offshore, the contract states a 30% verification on all assessments. Within those assessments, there'll be 500 safety critical assessments to be completed and verified over 3 weeks. So this is 12 days of verification over a 4-week period. So you'll need 3 verifiers covering 20 assessors. Let's look at scenario 2 for a competency management system rollout. So the assessments to be completed over 18 months, there's roughly about 110 assessments coming in per month. This will be a half day per week for the verification over an 18-month period. So you'll just require the 1 verifier. Do we need qualifications for assessors and verifiers? The answer is no, unless you have a requirement due to accreditation or client requirements for this. We often look at training assessors and verifiers, and it can be difficult to decide if assessors and verifiers require formal qualifications. Assessors and verifiers do not require formal accreditation or qualifications. They only require formal qualifications if your competency management system has got an accreditation which states that the assessors and the verifiers need to have a formal qualification. However, if your competency management is not client requirements, then you do not need to have a formal qualification for either the assessors or the verifiers. There is no legal requirement for assessors or verifiers to have a formal qualification, which means the company can have an internal training course which focuses on their own competency system and processes. Also, the verifiers do not require to have monitoring plans in place when performing their verification activities. Non-accredited training methods. Polaris Learning offer several different training methods for non-accredited assessors and verifiers. The training-only method, so the assessor and the verifier candidates just do the training they've been issued with a training online certificate or a training workshop certificate. This can be done, again, through the online methods, the blended learning methods, or a workshop method. Training with knowledge. The assessors and the verifiers would go through the training process, and at the end of the training process, they would complete a knowledge assignment before they are issued with their certificate. The training with a practical assignment. Again, the training is very similar to the previous methods. However, once the assessors and the verifiers have completed their training, they would go back to the place of work, they would perform some assessments or verification, and they would submit these to Polaris for us to review before we submit their certificate of competence. So here are some of the key features of assessor training. Assessment setup. So we'd look at the roles and responsibilities of the assessors, the candidates, and we also touch on the role of the verifier. What are the standards that are going to be assessed, the methods of assessment used within the organization, and how to record and report the assessments. Assessment principles. We discuss the assessment planning and how this is done, how to use the methods of assessment available to gather the evidence of the assessment. We also review how to judge the evidence and the best ways to provide feedback to the candidate. Working with people. So it's a big part of the role of the assessor, as they will need to work with candidates, other assessors within their department. Also, the assessor will have to interact and work with the verifier who they've been allocated to as part of the assessment process. Key features of the verifier training. So we start with the assessment refresher. We discuss the roles and responsibilities of all the individuals involved, the assessors, the candidates, and other verifiers. We go through the standards that are being assessed within the organization. Also, we go over the methods of assessment available and the benefits and drawbacks of each of these methods, and how the assessments are documented and reported. We then move on to the principles of verification. The first area we discuss is sample planning and how verifiers should choose their sample for verification. We discuss how much of a sample should be verified, such as 20% or 30%. We also look at the verification process and how it's documented. And again, we discuss how the verifier feeds back their findings to the assessor. We also look at standardization. So we review the standardization process and explain why it is important to have standardization meetings and discuss it as a group and what sort of information you would pass on to the assessors. Training in a global setup. So Polaris Learning offer different methods of delivering assessor and verifier training. Here are some of the options that we can offer. On-site training. So this is done through workshops where we come on site and deliver the training face-to-face with groups of assessors or verifiers. We also offer remote training. So this is done through webinars, Skype calls, where we deliver the training online and speak with the assessors or the verifier candidates. We have the online training. This is through Plus. This platform allows us to set up courses online for candidates to work through the training and submit their evidence towards our qualifications. We also offer translation. So Polaris also can have some of the courses translated into different languages to assist candidates whom English is not their first language. So from our own experience, deciding on the correct method for training is vital. So for example, the online version may be the most cost-effective method of training. However, completion rates can be low, and when it's investigated, it turns out that candidates, for example, with poor download speeds. So again, then we've reverted back to the on-site training, and completion rates have then improved, and the candidates can ask questions and discuss their roles and responsibilities directly with the trainer. So it is vital that when deciding which method you decide to go with, again, it's right for the people who are undertaking the training. Do assessors and verifiers need refresher training or recertification? Yes. There can be several reasons for them going through recertification or refresher training. Both assessors and verifiers will need refresher training if they've not been involved in the process of assessment or verification for a significant period of time, or if they are not meeting the standard for documenting assessments or feeding back to candidates. Bespoke training. So Polaris Learning can offer organizations or companies the option of a bespoke assessor and verifier training course. We have recently created an online assessor and verifier training course for a major offshore drilling contractor. Companies can have an assessor training built around their own assessment and verification process. Also, the company can put its own assessment paperwork and procedures into the training course, so the candidates going through the training can download their own policies, procedures. Polaris can also build the knowledge assignment or practical assignments into the course, which again would follow the company's own assessment process. You can also use your own assessment paperwork as part of this. Also, once the candidates completed the course in full, Polaris can offer the certificate to be automatically generated as well. So there's no need to wait for certificates to be created or printed. The candidate and employer can simply download the certificate and either store it electronically or they can print hard copies to keep. Well, I have some questions here that we can go through. That's some of the most frequent questions that we get asked. What would you suggest goes into the client's own assessor training contents? So again, it's good to get the detail of the client's own assessment processes, especially try and communicate well, which is all about the good assessment, what it looks like and how it should be presented. So again, guidance is always good for the assessor. So if we have a guidance document in place, we can use that to show to the assessors and the verifiers to help them with their own assessor training. Again, we put that in part of the online training on Plus. What is the difference between L&D 9D and L&D 9DI? So the difference in these two qualifications really is the L&D 9D stands for Learning and Development, Unit number 9, Direct Methods of Assessment. And the L&D 9DI stands for Learning and Development, Unit number 9, using direct and indirect methods of assessment. So there is some companies or organizations which do not use indirect methods of assessment. So again, they would not meet the criteria for the L&D 9DI qualification. So again, we would then recommend that they go through the L&D 9D qualification, which is basically all on direct methods of assessment. Well, another frequently asked question we get is, what is the difference between a PITO and the SQA L&D 9DI? The APITO Assessor Award is for the oil and gas industry only, and it's only recognized by APITO. The SQA L&D 9DI Award is for many different organizations, companies. There's no specific area where the L&D 9DI applies to. It's multi-industry recognized, as we call it. It's internationally recognized. So again, another good part of this qualification for the SQA qualification, it's your qualification. So when you've done your training and you've got the qualification, it stays with you. So again, whichever industry you may decide to work in, or if you move between different industries, the qualification still stays with you. So we have a few questions coming in. So will there be a participation certificate for this online webinar? No, I don't think we have a participation certificate for this webinar. So for refresher training, how often would we recommend refresher training? So one of the recommendations that we would have for refresher training would be really dependent on the company itself. We may decide that the refresher training might only happen if there's a change within the procedure or a change within the assessment paperwork. However, if somebody's got a assessor award or accreditation and they haven't been involved in any assessment or verification over a significant period of time, again, you would then look to do assessor and verifier refresher training. This really is up to the organization itself. There's no formal recommendations out there for refresher training. Some companies have set it every 2 years. I've seen some companies set it at every maybe 3 years, or if there's just any changes to the assessment process, or again, the verification process on that matter as well. Okay, is there any other questions? Yes, the technical witness can assist the technical vet or the technical IV, but they could not replace the technical IV if they do not have a verification certificate. They would replace the technical IV, in which case they would become the technical IV. But what you can do, you could have a formal verifier look at the verification of assessment, and they can be assisted by a technical witness. They can be assisted by somebody with a technical expertise to let them know that it could be knowledge or it could be assessment details within maybe an observation have been done correctly, and that the detail within the assessment is okay and it meets the criteria. Okay, thank you very much for your time. I wish you all a very good day. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. If you do have any questions, please feel free just to email Polaris at a further date. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.